Where am I? Here I am.
Well, you're gone.
You didn't kick. I
You didn't get canked.
I did not get kinked. Guys, welcome back to the Boys of Summer on your video scope. You know what it means. You know what it is. When you see these three smiling angelic countenances, you know that it can only attest for a couple of things. One, it must be Wednesday, 8 p.m. EST somewhere in the world. Two, it must be pinch me, I must be dreaming time. And three, you're about to enter light speed with your favorite expert cartoonist. Welcome back to Pencil to Pencil. Guys, let's do some introductions. I am your first host. I wear many hats besides this one. I am on the board of the National Cartoonist Society and also the Philadelphia chapter chair. Go Birds! On top of all those very lovely things, I have a graphic novel series at Scholastic Graphics called Leon the Extraordinary. The newest book, Worst Friends Forever, is in stores now, and the next one will be out next year. Oh my goodness! Welcome to the show. Guys, I would be remiss if I did not introduce my cohort, co-conspirator, and co-compatriot. He is
Cocoa for Cocoa Puffs?
He is Cocoa for Cocoa Puffs, and also a world webcomic title contention. By God, it's Stone Cold Steve Conley. What up, Steve Conley?
Gentlemen, it is so good to see you.
Yes.
I miss you. I miss you guys. 2 weeks away is too long. It's too long.
It seems like the time went by fast. The summer is just evaporating.
Yeah, whatever were we doing with our time? But my name is Steve Conley. I write and draw the webcomic The Middle Age. It is your 23rd favorite webcomic. Go Birds.
Go Birds.
You can find it over on Webtoons, which had just passed 23,000 subscribers. 23,000 subscribers. And it's over on the Go Comics and the Tapas, which has got like a few subscribers. So I don't even know why I mentioned it, but you know, if you're on Tapas, I love you. But you can also check out my D&D books over at steveconley.com. The next one, Stabracadabra, launches, I think, next week. We're going to launch our Kickstarter campaign. But I would be remiss if I didn't introduce the Tower of Power, the man of the hour, the maestro of mark making, the majestic, the mercurial, the I'm out of M words, Mr. Mike Manley.
Hey, oh, magnificent.
Magnificent mercurial me. Yes, yes. I'm feeling very mercurial today. I'm Mike Manley, a 40-year veteran of drawing your childhood.
I love it.
And I got some more of that this week because I posted some, since we were last together, I posted some artwork from the 80s that I did. Color. I did a lot of coloring books and activity books. I even posted some samples for jobs that I didn't get. For Muppet Babies and stuff. So
is there one of those that you wish you had gotten, Mike? Apart from wanting the gig at the time, is there one you look back on and say, I wish I could have done that one?
I don't know, probably not. I did those things because to me the main thing was having a job, right? Like my idea of what it was to be a professional was all the artists that I admired, and usually those guys in their career did all kinds of, you think about usually especially the Mad Magazine guys, they did all kinds of advertising on top of doing comics and strip, especially people like Jack Davis, Mort Drucker, a lot of those guys, Wally Wood, they did a lot of advertising stuff. So I was still trying to do comics, but the main thing is I wanted to draw and not have to go do work back in advertising or go back and work in a restaurant or something like that. So,
but it wasn't like there's one that got away. You really wanted to do the Dragon Slayer movie adaptation or anything like that?
Not in the beginning of my career, no, not the first couple of years. Ended up doing, in fact, Titan is going to be doing an omnibus of the Conan the King books, and that was my first regular Marvel gig after the Transformers, and I was working on it with my girlfriend at the time. And so I would lay it out, and then we would split up the penciling. And so I have Xeroxes of all that stuff, because back in the day, you're always afraid that if you FedExed it and, the plane crashed or something happened, and you would say, well, I just drew those 8 pages. Well, sorry, you got to redraw them again. Oof. So I think I talked about this before. So there was a place in town that charged you 25 cents a Xerox, right? And they closed at 5 o'clock. So every day that I was sending something, or Judy was sending something, we would have to run in town, usually me, I'd run in town, go to the place, get a Xerox, and then it's too light. Okay, well, I'm going to darken it a little bit. No, it's too dark. Okay, well, I already spent 50 cents, and so when I got my first royalty check from drawing the Transformers, I went and bought my own Xerox machine. That was the best money. They were much more expensive, but that was the single best investment that I probably made for the first 30 years of working in comics, because if you could Xerox your stuff, you could blow stuff up, reduce stuff, put it on the light box. You could Xerox it, go to FedEx or whatever. I didn't have to go someplace else. And while there's some, old lady or somebody who doesn't know what they want, and you got to talk to this guy, this was basically an asshole, right? And it's like, if you make a bad copy, why are you charging me for the bad copy? That's your fault. You put it in sideways. You didn't put it the right way, right? So...
It also, can I give a shout out to the monstrous copier you had in your studio? And I think it's hard for people to kind of make scale of what you're talking about. This is like a legit back of Kinko's, big ass copy machine. It's not like the little desktop.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And I mean, and because I had that, it just improved my life in so many ways that, you know, you didn't have to run someplace. If you did something, this is before we were doing everything on the computer. If you do something on the computer now, you scan it, you can futz around with it. But, you know, back in the day, you either had to go get a stat or you had to make a Xerox. And if you wanted to go, oh, you know, I drew this, but now I want to reduce this. You know, if you got to get in your car, drive in town, get a Xerox, come back, you know, it was, you know, the two best investments in the beginning were the Xerox machine and the Artograph and the light table. Like those three things were like really, really necessary to be able to do this job. So,
well, you know, also what's funny is, which was probably maybe, you know, I like to say if we had a special secret word, it would be facsimile machine. Like the duck with the Groucho glasses drops down. But I guess the next thing after that would be a tabloid scanner.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my first big purchase. That
giant machine didn't do tabloid?
Yeah, like the 12 by 18 size.
Oh, right.
Scanner.
Right, because there was 11 by 14, which was standard. But if you wanted to scan a comic page, you needed the 12 by 18. And I think I had a Mustech.
No, the Mustangs. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, I had those, and they scanned really slow.
Was it like the SCSI cable that was like a garden hose?
Yeah,
computer cable.
Yeah, so there was all these things that like you really needed to be able to crank out pages, right? And now we do it all on the on the computer. But when I first started out, I was just thinking, I always had a light box, but yeah, I mean, you could blow a deadline literally and miss FedEx because you had to go into town and deal with that asshole. Right? And by the time you got through jerking around with him and traffic or whatever, it's like, shit, you get back and FedEx, because they would pick up, I think, until 5 o'clock. But I could drive to the airport until 9:30. So I think I talked about this before. I got so good at driving from my house, breaking the law. I could get from my house to the airport to FedEx. I think I did it once in like 13 minutes.
I swear back in the
early speed racer.
I swear back in the early days of SPX, there were like panels on photocopying. I swear there was the first 2 shows were how to make your zine, and it was like how to convince your Kinko's Office Depot person to do a good job.
Oh yeah, I mean, I remember a couple times you would go in and Xerox something, and they'd be like, I can't copy this. This is Spider-Man.
Right. Like I drew that.
Remember that? They'd be like, it's like, no, I'm drawing Spider-Man for Marvel. I'm drawing Batman for DC. I don't know. You got to sign a release.
That's great.
But you know what? You do not need a release for tonight, you guys. This spectacular smash bang show we have for you. Guys, I know you missed us. I know you missed us blind. But we are back with a follow-up from, it wasn't our last episode. It was a couple of episodes back where we had, let me find a graphic, our good buddy Alex Saviuk was here. I'm always covering the graphics. Sorry about that, you guys. I'll learn one of these days. And I don't know what happened, but he agreed to come back. So look at us. Even so cool, Steve changed the graphic for tonight. So we had such a great time talking to Alex a couple of weeks ago. We figured let's finish the conversation because we kind of stopped. We blew the whole 2 hours and just felt like we just started to scratch the surface. So barely. So I'm excited to get back into it, and I want to just start the conversation. So if you are new to the channel, hello, we do this every Wednesday when we're not on work break. Please like, subscribe, smash that alert button, and share a like, you guys. Don't keep pencil to pencil all to yourselves.
Not just for
Spread-
you.
Spread it around. It's like high school all over again. All right, guys. So let's get ready for rendering. Please welcome back to Pencil to Pencil, Alex Saviuk. All right, here, do that. All right, do this. Hold on. Rusty, you guys, give me a second. All right. Ping. Ah, there you go. Hey, Alex.
Hello.
Hey, how are you? Oh, who's
It's
your
Alex.
friend?
It's Alex and Snoopy.
Oh, yo, I love it. Hey, Snoopy.
He's very happy to be. Look, he's very happy to be here. This is his happy face.
I love it. What breed is Snoopy?
Well, we bought him. They said that he was a, like a, not a poodle. Oh, Bichon Frise.
Bichon Frise. Yeah.
Okay. But then when I took him, we took him to the vet, and the vet said, I don't know, just by judging from, the hair coat and everything, the quality of the hair, he says, I'm thinking this is more of a Maltese. And we said, well, we paid for a Bichon. He goes, well, I would say it's a Maltese. So wait until he's about a year and a half old, and you'll see if there's a change in the hair, the texture of the hair, etc. Yeah. And as far as I know, I don't think anything changed. So, nowadays, if any, back in the day, no, don't turn it into a sepia thing. Nowadays, we keep, what do we do with nowadays? What kind of color, what kind of screen tone are we going to have now?
I think it's neon green.
Neon green, okay. I just say we have a Maltese because I've actually bunked into a few people in the neighborhood that I live in, and here in Daytona Beach, surrounding cities that I've lived in, Port Orange, Ormond Beach. The only way you meet any of your neighbors is if you happen to be walking a dog. Okay. And, I'm married for 48 years. I'm an old geezer. So it's not like you hear, hey, you know what? If you want to pick up girls, you have to, get a puppy, start walking in, or get into an apartment building where you have a, elevator and you walk in your puppy and there's some beautiful women in the apartment building. You go, oh, how cute. What's your name? Hey, can I have your number? You want to have a cup of coffee? What do you want to do? Et cetera, et cetera. Maybe the dogs can have a play date. Hey, come on, let's get going. No, I'm way beyond that. Now I'm just happy to see somebody outside on the street thinking, God, did we move into a freaking ghost town or what? Where the hell are the people?
Everybody's inside.
It's too hot.
Yeah. Well, even in the mornings, that's the best time to see people, in the mornings or in the evenings, just as the sun is going down. But that's when all the little bugs and no-see-ums and gnats and all this other kind of stuff comes out. So you got to walk out with a hoodie on and all covered up so you don't get chewed alive.
Is that true?
Steve knows.
Your outfit after 6 p.m.
Well, yeah, you got it. That's right. Walk your dog before 6. After 6, not good. But my dog has, Hawkeye vision here, and in the dusk or as it's almost dark completely, he'll stop like a bird dog and freeze. And I'm going, Snoopy, what do you see? And I have to kind of squint my eyes and look forward, and I'm going, oh yeah, there's somebody down there, but they don't have a dog. Leave him alone. He sees people. He's just as happy to see people as I am. But if it's a dog, he's very, very happy.
Yeah, I love the idea of, especially sedentary cartoonists, you kind of need like something that's going to get you out of that chair.
Yes.
And yeah, Mr. Coffee.
Yeah, that's right. You have to have the coffee.
Yeah.
My dog loves to go out and play with the neighbor kids. Oh, okay. Well, see, now that, Roger, is a very good statement. If there are neighbor kids, I live in a community where I don't see any kids. So consequently, my dog can't play with the kids. But
go outside with a laptop. Just go outside with a YouTube on a laptop, and all the kids, those like zombies, they will shuffle towards you.
You know what, Mike, when you were saying that you bought that Xerox machine, I guess it was some giant clunky Xerox machine for 25 cents. And I remember having to go through the same thing that you did when I didn't have a Xerox machine, and you always wanted to Xerox your stuff. And, but you're saying, 25 cents. And now that you mentioned it, I'm thinking, you could have been like a BMOC if you've got the Xerox machine. Let the other artists in the neighborhood know, hey, I got a Xerox machine, 50 cents a Xerox. Come on over to my house and you can use my machine. This way you don't have to go into town and deal with the quote unquote a-hole that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah. Well, actually, you know, because I did have it, my other cartoonist friends who would sometimes work with me were also able to Xerox their work. I mean, again, it's like one of those things you didn't really think about in your daily routine, but there literally was like when you would get towards the end of the day, you're like, oh, I got to make copies of this stuff before I send it. I mean, we still have to like scan stuff, size stuff,
sure,
all that technical stuff that's, you know, Jack Kirby never did that. All those guys would just take stuff in, they would get copies. And in fact, the reason why the Kirby collector exists is because when Kirby moved to California, they had to Xerox all of his stuff and send it so he would have reference.
Right.
So that's why that stuff exists and why a lot of stuff doesn't. Like, you just think of all the great pencil jobs from people in the past that we don't have copies of. Like, there's a lot of copies of John Buscema's layouts, but not a lot of copies of his pencils.
Right.
Right. And so people see those layouts and they think that those are actually his pencil, but those are just the layouts. There was the pencils that came from it. You know?
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, and then talking about, you know, having to Xerox stuff, I don't know if I mentioned this the last time, but there were 2 times where something happened with FedEx. Once at DC, once at Marvel. DC, I remember I did something for Julie Schwartz, and he calls me up and he goes, did you make copies of that job, the 8 pages you just sent that you sent in? And I said, yeah. I was probably doing a Whatever Happened to series in the back of DC Presents. So it was an 8-page story. And I said, yeah, I did. He goes, well, the FedEx plane crashed and the back end of it burned up. And obviously your work was in the back of the truck, of the back of the plane, and we don't have it. So if you have it, you'll have to redraw it. I said, okay, no problem. Am I getting paid for it? Yes. Okay, good. So I got paid for it. So I didn't mind. Hey, I had a light box and I could just trace it off 1, 2, 3, easy gig. The second time that happened, I had was working at Marvel doing Spider-Man Adventures based on the animated series, and which was being inked by Rob Stull at the time. May he rest in peace. Way too early. And God, Rob had such a, I mean, I always talk about Joe Sinnott having a line made of liquid gold. That's the way I classified it. And have to say Rob was kind of right behind there. Boy, that guy could do a smooth line like it's nobody's business, especially on the animated stuff, because they wanted it to look like a little bit of a coloring book, I guess. But I sent in the Xeroxes, and he light boxed the Xeroxes and, you know, did the job. So that were 2 instances where, thank goodness, you know, we had that availability. But I never had a Xerox machine like Mike, and it wasn't until I bought one of these all-in-ones, an 11x17, when the prices came down, and I went to Home Depot, Office Depot, Home Depot, yeah. I went to Office Depot, and they had this thing called a Brother.
Yeah,
the Brothers. Like $200 for an all-in-one fax, 11x17 Xerox, printer, scanner. Gosh, how can you beat it? Even if the thing dies after a couple of years, you spend another $200 and you got that in your house. But I did remember I was working on, when you mentioned a Mustex scanner, I was working on some stuff for Egmont in Sweden. And I needed to scan stuff, and I got in touch with Bob McLeod, and I said, Bob, you have a Mustex scanner, right? He goes, yeah, I do. I said, well, how long does it take to scan a page of 11x17 black and white? He goes, about 30 minutes. I said, 30 minutes? Oh my God. He goes, yeah, I usually, you know, at the end of the day, when I finish inking a page or 2, I scan them right away because I don't want to wait until the end of the job. I'll need like 3 days to scan the job. So yeah, I'm thinking, wow, that's terrible. But these Brother machines, they'll scan an 11x17 at 600 in about 15 seconds.
Right.
Yeah,
It's
they're
incredible.
way faster now. In fact, I remember a couple times you would do something like you would start the scan, and then maybe you go make coffee or you
Right.
do something, and you come back, and then it's like, it's not good. I got to do, So you ended up, and the other thing was, actually, I still have my brother, which I still use as a scanning donkey, and I have my other machine behind me, which is wireless, which is sometimes funky. But I had to use the what is it? The software, Silverfast or whatever it is.
Yes, I remember Silverfast and ViewScan's the other thing.
ViewScan.
ViewScan.
Because they stopped making drivers, right? So it's like all these other things that you have to deal with, and that can really mess your day up at the end of the day. It's like, oh, I need to take a picture of this and get this to somebody, and now my computer updated overnight and the driver doesn't work, or they haven't made a driver yet.
Right.
I would
every time Windows would do their updates, I remember, I guess after my first brother went on me, I bought an HP. Same thing, all in one. And when Windows had updated one time, well, I was having all kinds of problems with it. And they said, actually called them up and said, well, what's the problem with this thing? It was working fine. Now Windows update. Well, the new update doesn't recognize the old driver. So you'll have to do like some driver updates. So I tried doing that, and it just never worked properly. It would stop in the middle of a scan, or I was getting it. It was messed up. So finally, I needed it. I think I was still working on a job that had a deadline Monday, and this was Friday or whatever. And I immediately went to the store, just bought another brother, and had to, install it and the whole thing. And it was well worth it, because then once that was in, 15 seconds a page, and bam, I was done.
Alex, did you give the old brother a Viking funeral? You light it on fire?
Yes, and I was singing some Norse songs in the background. I got my whole family involved, and we were humming and whatever. Yeah, we had the whole thing going on. We shot the flaming arrow. It was pretty cool.
When you were working on the newspaper strip,
yeah,
and you were working with Joe Sinnott, were you you want to break that down a little bit, because we touched on it the last time. There was some stuff that you drew, and then some stuff you inked, and then some stuff that Joe inked. Okay,
well, here was the deal. When I first started with Stan, I was penciling the Sundays. That was 1997. Joe was inking. So I would do 2 weeks at a time, basically, and then send those pencils off to, I guess, probably sent it back to California, and then they dealt with it. Then after a while, they said, well, why don't you just send it to Stan Sakai? He's doing the lettering. Okay. So I would send it to Stan Sakai. And so I never got to see it again. So, of course, when I finished my 2 Sundays, I would run to the UPS store and make 2 Xeroxes. I did not have a brother at that time or anything, 1997. Then in 2003, I'm still doing the Sundays. And John Tartaglione, who was inking the dailies, had to go to the hospital for a procedure, as they said. And they asked me if I could, ink a week. And I said, sure. And then eventually I got to start inking it at the end of 2003. Along with penciling the Sundays, I was inking the dailies. And then when I would do finish inking the dailies, I would have to send them off to this company in Orlando. Well, not the actual dailies. They wanted Xeroxes of the dailies. So I had to go back, do Xeroxes, send those off to Reed Brennan Media.
Yeah.
Okay. And now Reed Brennan Media is only about 50 minutes away by car. Okay. So eventually, if I felt like, geez, I can't get these things inked by, 6:30 so I can run to FedEx, because at that time it was too late to call them up for a pickup, because they only picked up by 5. So then if I knew that I was going to be late and inking into the night, then I would just take a ride the following morning to Reed Brennan, schmooze with the people there. Got to meet some really nice people. I saw some of the process that was going on, which was kind of interesting. On this one girl's desk, her name was Ailish Waddell. Okay, really.
My editor. She's still there. She's one of my
She's
editors.
still there. As a matter of fact, I just sent her a note recently to wish her a happy birthday. And
Yeah.
I hadn't been in touch with her for a while, and we just chatted back and forth a little bit. But yeah, she's a sweetheart. And on her desk was all the other stuff, and Paul Ryan when he was still alive, again, rest in peace, Paul. Excuse me. I said, well, Paul, Paul gets because she was showing me some, I guess, proofs, whatever. And I said, does Paul send Xeroxes in? And she says, no, he sends in scans. I said, oh, really? You can send in scans? I said, well, what do you need? I'm like, what are the specs that you need for me to scan? This way I don't have to take these trips. I can always scan it, the following morning, for Pete's sakes. Mm-hmm. And at that time, I only still had an 11 by, a 9x12 scanner or whatever. I didn't even have an 11x14. So I always had to scan a daily, which was done basically 11 by, about 6 or 7 by 14. And I'd have to, do 2 panels and then stitch it together in Photoshop. So I was doing that. It was still a lot more convenient than driving in, spending another half hour driving back. You're losing about 3 hours. Okay. Then when I got the big guy, 11 by 17, it made life a lot easier as far as, scanning and sending stuff in. But yeah, I spent then from 2003 up until 2019 inking the dailies on Larry Lieber, penciling the Sundays with Joe Sinnott inking. And in the last 6 months of the strip, I guess it was 2018 around May. Ailish was at the Rubens too. Jeez, man, I missed a lot of people over there. Oh well. And I met John Rose at the in Tennessee not too long ago. But at any rate, so what was I saying before I saw John Rose's face? Okay.
So you started penciling and inking, then eventually you were just inking the dailies?
Okay, no, I started penciling the Sundays, and I was always inking the dailies. Okay, the only time I ever penciled and inked anything in that newspaper strip started in June of 2018, the year that Stan passed away, when I got a call from Stan's office from his assistant, Michael Kelly. And he said, hey, listen, Larry wants to retire from penciling the strip. Would you want to take it over? I figured you would. I said, yeah, thanks. As a matter of fact, I've been waiting 7 years for this phone call. And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, I thought, Larry's 87. I thought he'd want to retire when he was at least 80. Just like when George Olson retired from doing the Phantom Daily Strip penciling, he actually called me up and asked me if I was, let's say, by recommendation from Keith Williams, who was inking George on the Phantom Dailies. And he's asked me, he says, hey, listen, Keith said that you'd probably be interested in penciling the Phantom Dailies. I said, sure, why not? And he says, yeah, well, they don't really pay that much. They still only pay X amount of dollars for dailies. And I said, well, that's kind of what I'm getting for Spider-Man. So, I mean, I guess it's okay. And he was going to send me, God knows, he said he had boxes of reference for the strip and all this stuff that he had. And he goes, I'll send all that reference to you, if you get the gig, etc. And I kind of almost felt like the way he was talking, I had it. But at that time, I guess, what's his name? Over at Egmont, Ulf Granberg at Egmont. Yeah, he was good friends with the editor at KF. And he convinced them that Paul Ryan was the guy to do the strip. And so Paul Ryan got to do the pencils and inks on the Phantom Dailies. And I said, okay, well, hey, listen, it's in great hands. Paul Ryan's a great guy, good artist, the whole thing, great artist. And then eventually, I think when Paul passed away, I'm trying to remember, I think it went to Terry Beatty. Yeah, I think it went to Terry Beatty. And once again, when I heard that obviously, Paul had passed, that, I sent in samples, and the editor just favored, Terry's style over mine. And hey, when you talk about, you were talking earlier about, gigs that you sort of applied for that you never got. I mean, it seemed like I was never able to get to do the Phantom dailies.
Well, I did the Phantom when Paul passed away. I remember this very clearly. It was something like a Thursday or a Friday. I talked to Brendan Burford, the editor, and because I had, worked with him for a long time on the Judge,
right?
They basically gave me the strip,
right?
Because one of the things about working on one of those strips, as you know from drawing Spider-Man, most people think, oh, Spider-Man's a fun gig, and it is, but something like the Phantom is it's a hard strip to draw because there's so much that goes into it. Even unlike there's the Marvel version of New York City, right?
Right.
You can make it look like the real Empire State Building, or you can draw a Marvel version of the Empire State Building. But anytime you start drawing guys with like guns and jeeps, real tactical, and like I'm drawing some of this stuff in this particular story, that's hard work. It's hard work.
Again, it's not a figure of the Phantom. Drawing the Phantom is easy.
Yeah.
The environment for the Phantom, outside of, if you said, if Tony DePaul gave you a strip that said, Mike, this strip is going to take place in nothing but the jungle. All you're going to have to draw is trees and some plants and stuff like that. Strips. And you'd say, great, because you don't have to draw some, you're not set in the 40s and you don't have to draw B-52s coming out of the sky and, maybe tanks or guys in whatever particular uniforms and, or set in the past someplace where you have to draw. Oh my gosh, you watch these, my wife and I, we watch these series sometimes on streaming, with period pieces and, these castles and everything else in Russia or whatever that took them 150 years to build. Okay. And I've had to draw a strip or a story or two, even at Egmont, where I had to draw those buildings. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, this is crazy. Because, there were no just straight floorboards inside those buildings. The floors had, all kinds of textures. The walls had textures. Everything was texture. And you had to put that stuff in.
Every shot and some Phantom stories requires some reference. If you're going to do it
the right way. Right. And the thing is, if you don't do it the right way, you'll be chastised by the Phantom community. Because, it's like, oh, this artist is not taking the time to do this properly, and the so-and-so did it better, et cetera, et cetera. And hey, you have a gig, you don't want to hear that stuff. So, man, I got to put in the time, and that's what you do,
Yeah. So did you do the Sundays, or you didn't do the Sundays either?
I never did anything on the Phantom strip except one time. Terry Beatty was in a deadline lurch, and he sent me kind of a thumbnail layout and said, hey, listen, would you be able to pencil this for me? Because, I could really use the help. I'm kind of really bound for time. And I said, sure. So I penciled the thing and I scanned it and I sent it to him. And, I ghosted. I ghosted a Phantom Sunday. And so I can honestly say, yes, I have now drawn a Phantom Sunday, but nobody ever knows it except we just found out today.
So now you've done several stories for Egmont, which is a publisher in Finland.
In Sweden, yes. I started in, let's see. When I got out of regular comics back in 1998, after I had done a 1.5 year stint on the X-Files for Topps, which was a lot of fun. And then, of course, they canceled that book at the time because the movies were coming out and they said, we don't have time to review scripts anymore and stuff like that. So we're not going to renew the license with Topps to do the X-Files. So now I was still trying to get into regular comics with no luck. CrossGen was starting up here in Florida, and sent some stuff to them, and I didn't, had no luck with them either for whatever reason. So I was, kind of stuck, and so I was just doing the strips that I could work on, and the Sundays at the time, the dailies, and then I found out that there was this group called the Friends of the Phantom, and it was run by Pete Klaus, and another gentleman who's, gosh, I hate to say it, I turned 73 over the weekend, and my memory is starting to fail me every now and then. So, but his name will come to me, and I'm sorry, all you Friends of the Phantom, I'm not committing sacrilege. My brain is going, sue me. Anyway, so at any rate, this gentleman who was the actual head of the Friends of the Phantom, he had a tragic end. I mean, he was retired as a music teacher, I think, doing high school, and he was just starting to enjoy life for a year or two. And they had a bicycle accident where he was, going down a hill pretty fast, and some truck came out on the intersection. He slammed into the truck, and it was bye-bye. Okay. But at any rate, when I found out about this group, Friends of the Phantom, and then they said, oh yeah, well, Dick Giordano is drawing a strip story there, and Bob McLeod and Paul Ryan. And I'm thinking, well, on a freelancer's sort of my own freelancer's credo, it wasn't the type of thing where I was, first of all, I wasn't good friends with these people. They were colleagues and acquaintances. Okay. And I'm cordial to everybody I meet, but I'm not going to call up a fellow freelancer who's not, a best friend of mine and say, hey, listen, can you give me the contact of that guy? Because I'd like to work over there too. We're all in the same boat. We're all looking for a gig. Okay. And so I didn't get in touch with the artists, but I did get in touch with the Friends of the Phantom, and they gave me Ulf Granberg's contact information. So I got his email address, and I just drew up a couple of new samples because on Bob McLeod's website, I think he showed us a couple of samples of what he had drawn. Yeah. So I did something, not the same thing, but something similar, the Phantom sitting in the skull cave, another shot of the Phantom riding Hero and Devils, alongside them, lots of plants and the jungle stuff, whatever. And I scanned that stuff and I sent it off to Ulf. And gosh, within a day, he got back to me and he said, hey, yeah, this is really good. I'd love to give you a story. And that was at the end of 2003, Christmas week, as a matter of fact. And the first week in January, he sent me a script. And in those days, again, I did not have a scanner. And so when I finished it, I didn't send him Xeroxes because, well, you go to first of all, in speaking about some of the, let's say, people who don't have sufficient skills to even be working at a print shop, you could take a Xerox and you look at it. If you wanted to take a good Xerox, you could use it, but you're looking at it and there's these little pinpoints of black, like here and here. Then they clean the screen and then they take another Xerox. And then there's still a pinpoint of black over here.
PTSD.
Yeah, and then they go, okay, fine. So now it just so happens you have no control over those pinpoints of black, because on that page of black and white that you just scanned, there's black areas. And then the following page, he takes a Xerox where there wasn't a black area and there's a pinpoint of black. So now it just keeps on, and I said, forget it. I'm not doing this. I'm going to send in the originals. Well, I had to send in the originals via FedEx on my dime, and it cost me $75 to send it to Europe. Wow. And I never got those originals back because they, just whatever the excuses were over the years, I just never got them back. And but still, the following year in 2005, I drew another issue, and I called up my buddy Mark Simon. JAMAR knows Mark or met him on the weekend. You just met him this weekend, or you knew him already?
I think we met in passing a while back, but we had a nice chat last weekend.
Okay. But anyway, Mark runs a company called Animatics and Storyboards Inc. And he does a lot of storyboards for advertising, television, films, TV shows, the whole bit. And, I was doing work for him already since the year 2001. He actually came by when I was trying to get work in anything, since I was just doing the Sunday strip at that time, no comic work, I figured, well, it's time for me to fall back on my, my advertising background. And so I found out about him, and he was in Orlando, which is, again, an hour away. And I just put a package together and sent him a FedEx pack. And the following day, I guess he got it and called me right up and said, hey, listen, this stuff is great. Are you doing boards? Because I had even done some storyboard samples at that time, put some stuff together and, some storytelling stuff and sent some comics in, obviously. And he says, yeah, I could get you working right away. And so he kind of kept my head above water for a long time with doing advertising storyboards. And, as time went on, my knowledge of Photoshop got a little bit better because I was scanning the stuff and sending to him rather than, hand delivering all this stuff. And sometimes we would work on projects together, especially if he was doing stuff for Disney, for the theme parks over there. And I'd jump into his studio and I'd be, he'd hand me layouts and I'd be penciling or vice versa. Most of the time, I would do pencils, and if they needed to be finished, he would finish the pencils, do stuff in the computer with it, glitz it up, put in products and whatever. And eventually I learned how to do all that stuff myself. So it made storyboard life a lot easier than it was in the 70s and 80s when we didn't have Photoshop. And if you wanted to draw that box of Cascade, good Lord, you had to sit there with your coloring pencils and just freaking draw that box of Cascade. And you're looking at the script and going, oh, geez, she's holding it 5 times. This really stinks. And then there's the hero shot at the back end where, you got the front view and they give you a 3/4 view and you got to get this. And now even in Photoshop, geez, you can bend that sucker and just trim it up and pop it right in. And oh my, life is just so much easier with, the things that we can do now with the computer. But again, at the same time, when it comes to storyboards, I know people still use them. But there are programs out there that just keep getting more and more advanced, where art directors can just use the program themselves and they don't have to even farm the stuff out specifically, like I said, for advertising. There were some clients that would call me up every now and then and say, hey, listen, people that I would go in and sometimes I'd spend a day at an ad agency, get a day rate and, just do the work there. And then I started doing some stuff at home for them, and they haven't called me in a couple of years now. So I'm just assuming that they're doing everything in house.
Did you, when you were working, did you do any stuff for the publishers in Australia on the Phantom?
Well, I didn't. I never actually. Well, let's see. Yes, I did. I did covers for them. The way it worked at Egmont was that if you did a story for Egmont, and when Ulf Granberg was there, the policy was that if it got published in Sweden, they had a deal with Australia, the company called Frew, F-R-E-W. And about 2 or 3 months after it first published in Sweden, it would then get published in English in Australia. And that was commonplace. That's pretty much how it worked. Once Ulf left and they changed editorship, changed ownership, etc., Jim Shepard, the publisher, had passed away about 20 years ago, and it went to his wife. And then she was sort of co-publishing with some other people, and then she got out of it. And now, let's see, I did a 2-part Phantom story that came out last year. And I think it came out maybe in the fall. And the first part is finally coming out, I guess, next month in Australia. Somebody just posted the cover, I think, and I shared it because I liked the way the cover turned out. And there were a couple of sample pages that I had penciled and inked for that story there, attached to it also. So
who's writing the stories?
The stories are written by different guys. The ones that I worked, this 2-part story I worked on was written by a fellow who I'd never worked with before named Pitty Anderson.
Oh, okay.
And
So-
you know, he's written other comic stories, I guess, pretty much for the European market, etc. One of the big guys that was working on stories until he passed away at Egmont, his name was Kleis Ramerthy. And I worked with a number of stories for him. And so, but still, when it came for Egmont, I started in 2004, and I would say I probably did one story a year for them. Every year. At that time, there were 32-page stories. So 32 pages, pencil and ink. They give you 6 months to do it. Piece of cake. You know, whatever other advertising stuff I had, I always had something else on the board that I could, you know, turn to keep me busy during the day. That was a good deal. And then sales, as you know, the almighty factor of so many things in publishing's lives, came into play, and they decided, 32 pages is too much to pay for original material. So they went to 22 pages. And so you lost 10 pages of work. But again, you still had your 6 months to do the gig. And there was a time period where, again, there was a lapse, a change of editorship, and I didn't do anything for them for a couple of years, 3, 4. And then I finally got in touch and just said, hey, listen, you know, I'm looking to, you know, to do some stories if you guys would have me. And as it turned out, the one artist whose name was Hans Lindahl, very good artist, Swedish artist, and Kleis Ramerthy became co-editors, and they hired me right back. So I started working for them again, just doing one story a year of pencils and inks.
I did a couple. That's how I got to know Brendan Burford, is that I did 2 Secret Agent Corrigan stories for Egmont.
Did you? Oh, yeah. Wow. I've been asking them about doing a Secret Agent Corrigan or Modesty Blaze or something. And
I think they stopped those magazines. I don't know if they still do them now. But
I think they do a Modesty Blaze, but it's all reprints of
right,
the
So I
John
did
Hardaway and all that stuff.
Yeah, I did 2, and you know,
did you like working on it?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember who was it. Did Jerry Conway or somebody wrote the scripts, and originally,
really interesting.
Yeah. And I think originally Bob Wyacek was going to draw them, but then he backed out, so he recommended me, and so that's often how it as we're discussing. That's often how it works in comics and strips, especially because they want someone that they can count on, right?
Right. Sure.
With a comic strip, you can't suddenly go like, well, for the next 2 weeks, we're going to run some strips from like 1967. You don't mind, right? The newspaper would drop the strip.
Right.
Right. So in the case of when Paul passed suddenly, it literally was, there was 2 weeks or 1 week left on the story, and I had to literally just drop
into it.
Just hop right on it. They sent me stuff, and like you said, the Phantom fans are a little bit different than the regular comic book fans.
Oh yeah, they're very critical.
Right, and some of the people have been reading the Phantom since it started. I mean, they're literally like guys in their, like my dad's age, been reading the Phantom for 80 years, right? They've been reading it for a long time. So yeah, but the benefit to us is if you need reference, you can always get those guys to help you. Because I just had to draw a sequence, and I was able to get the Phantom Chamber guys. Reference for like this, the marriage of the Phantom, and there was a shot of the president or whatever, and the people in front of the cave. And I knew the Phantom, but I didn't know the lore of the Phantom before. And I still don't really know 80 years of, it's impossible. It's literally impossible. I mean, I have a lot of reprints. I buy the reprints, but it's like I have, you would literally have to be doing it for 30 years, like Tony, to know have read all the stuff. There's stuff that's in canon and like stuff now that's kind of like not in canon, and yeah, they're very it's different than the fans of like your Marvel or DC stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean, as far as the fans go, they would love it if obviously he still has Hero and he runs around in the jungle on a horse. I think at this stage he used to have a radio in the
Still does.
Still does.
The old
and
radio.
Now I know that in a couple of the Egmont stories that I had drawn, he and his wife, Diana, they were using a laptop. So, I mean, hey, he's gotten a little bit advanced. He's got a laptop. And I wasn't going to ask them, like, hey, where's the Wi-Fi tower? I wasn't going to ask that question.
That's something we've talked about because we've redesigned some stuff. And when we were just, talking to Tony and Jeff and everything, there was stuff that Paul did, but, it's like he designed a computer that looked like it would be kind of like in the Batcave with like giant keys on it. And I'm like, that doesn't really make any sense. So if the Bandar like support the Phantom,
right? Maybe
some of their kids went off to college and then they came back and like they know how to do Wi-Fi. They know how to do, I mean, that's the hard part about these characters, that you can't have them running around in the jungle like it was 1936 anymore, right?
Hey, listen,
cell phones.
Right.
So, it's sort of a tricky thing. Like there were stories where there were like little fairy people and stuff that are sort of like, I guess we ignore that stuff now, but
yeah,
that's a big part of trying to update the character. It's like with Spider-Man, he has a cell phone. Right, he started out, he had probably a phone in the kitchen with Aunt May, right? He didn't even have a phone in his bedroom, right?
Twirling a cord around.
Right, yeah. So there's a lot of stuff that when you have a character that's gone through 60 years, 50
you don't draw him cranking the car at the start to get it.
Right, yeah, exactly. So that's something that we all have to, just like the characters are we sort of have to update them or they don't seem realistic. Right?
Well, you know what? The Lee Falk created, I believe it was the 21st Phantom.
Yeah.
And the 21st Phantom was still running rampant, doing his thing throughout all this time, even 20 years ago when I started working for Egmont, it was still the 21st Phantom. Now, in the meantime, his kids have grown up and they have stories at Egmont where, you've got the boy and the girl, the twins, dressed as the Phantom, and they're having adventures together. And at one time, the storyline was that the dad got kidnapped. They can't find him, so now you've got the kids doing their thing. And I don't know if to this day, because they kind of stopped sending me issues via the mail, or I get one every now and then, occasionally. And of course, I can't read it; it's in Swedish. And Fru stopped sending me stuff because I hadn't done anything for them for a while. And like I said, when my stories were being reprinted in Australia 2-3 months after, let's say, a Swedish story came out, the editors there had gotten in touch with me a few times to draw covers for them for my own stories. So I must have done about 4 or 5 of those. And then I wasn't doing any, then they weren't even doing any more stories of mine. There were a couple in the tank, and I would say, hey, when are you going to get to that story? When are you going to get to that one? Well, we're kind of reworking things, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think there were a couple of stories that I had drawn that maybe didn't see the light of day in Australia for 1.5 to 2 years. And at that point, I saw that I guess on some Phantom threads that those stories came out, and I'm thinking, wow, they didn't even get in touch with me, to have me draw a cover for my own story. But you know what? I don't lose sleep over that stuff. Don't have to. So at any rate, but that's pretty much how it is. I have I have an Egmont story on my board now that I started a long time ago, and I had to interrupt it for surgery on my knee, and then other things happened. I had trigger finger surgeries on my hands, and so it got to be really difficult to try and sit there, for a day and try to draw a page. I mean, a quick sketch commission or one of those things, big, whatever. But when you're doing a story and you're doing all little tiny stuff, like you say, you got to have reference. You got to have the material that you want to put in the back. When I see some of these some of the new artwork that comes out, and I'm looking at the backgrounds, and I'm going, wow, I definitely can tell that some of these backgrounds here were computer generated, and they just dropped that stuff in, right? And hey, I'm envious of that because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, they didn't have to draw them all. Okay, they popped them all in there in perspective, going really deep, and people are tiny in the background going. It took them like 2 minutes to grab it and drop it in and put a couple of figures in the foreground that had a couple of word balloons. Now, if I had to draw that panel, it'd take me forever.
It would be better.
It would be better. Yeah, I know. I've spoken to a couple of Italian artists that I met when I was in Sicily, not this past June, and they all do it by hand. As a matter of fact, the guy who painted the cover of that latest issue of Fru that's on Facebook right now with the Phantom and this Asian girl who's an assassin. I really liked the way the cover turned out. I looked the guy up on Google, then I saw him on Instagram, and he was actually painting it, vertically on an easel. And I thought, oh wow, I didn't realize it, because so many guys do digital stuff these days. Obviously, that they can mimic oil, they can mimic watercolor, but and they always say, oh, it's faster, it's much faster. But man, you just don't have the feel of that brush tip going on top of the paper when I see them holding a stylus, and the way the thing is calibrated, there's actually a space between the tip and the screen. Even if it's only like a 32nd of an inch, you can tell there's this little circle going around, and I'm going, that's not really, that's not feeling it, but
that ties to a question we got earlier. Don't want to jump the gun on the question Palooza, but Toy Visuals asked, how was Photoshop received by artists initially? Was there any pushback against the early adopters of it? I guess I feel like that ties into what we're talking about here. Was there any negative reaction to using Photoshop?
Well, I would have to say when it seemed to come into place, I guess in the late 90s, when they started doing lettering and coloring in Photoshop for at the comic book companies, it made life a lot easier for them, because you got the undo button, you just go back one step. You can, if you're lettering, for Pete's sakes, you letter separately, or you letter on another layer, and then you take that balloon and you move it around. Whereas in the old days, as you know, Mike and Steve, I don't know if you were around with that. Boy, if they had to do a new balloon, geez, they had to do it on a separate piece of paper. Then they would have to, cut stuff out on the regular sheet, strip the balloon in there. God forbid it was going to go bigger, then they'd have to white out the edge of the balloon, put in a new edge, cut into the artwork underneath it. They'd have to do all this stuff by hand, which was really very, very time consuming. And, not very, it was efficient because you could never tell, because they, in paste up and mechanicals, they did a really good job. But, the computer just, saved their butts with a lot of that stuff. And I would imagine once they started doing digital coloring, they didn't have to have the colorist, mark up the borders of the color guides with,
the computer did the separation. I remember, actually right here is my original 1994 Apple laptop. And I remember I bought my first with my Batman money. It was incredibly expensive. I think I bought my desktop, my laptop, Photoshop, the Adobe suite. I think I had 32 gigs of memory, blah, blah. It came to about 20 grand.
Wow.
About 20 grand. But I realized that that's the way everything was going, because regular publishing had already gone that way. And so I figured, you know, no one is ever going to tell me, Mike, go buy a computer. What would happen, which is what eventually happens, is like, well, this is the way we want the artwork. The way that you did it with the, you know, the flying camel through the eye of the needle. We don't do that anymore, right? So I think the resistance, as I remember it, was from a lot of artists. Just, you know, I got my thing I do. That's how I like to do it. I don't want to do, you know, I don't want to get a computer. You know, I don't want to get a fax machine. I don't, you know, especially in comics, right? Because comics, everybody's a freelancer. So if you've got to update all that, it's not like if you work at Walt Disney and Walt Disney goes, tomorrow, computers. Everybody gets a computer. Everybody gets trained. But as a freelancer, you know, Marvel didn't give me 20 or DC didn't give me 20 grand. That was my 20 grand that I went and spent.
Oh yeah, after taxes.
Yeah. Yeah. So now people are sort of born into it. And I think that they're sort of like, they're just used to, you know, they're used to it. We came in, it was basically just like what Jack Kirby did. You know, it was just piece of paper, pencil. If you live close enough, you could take it in. Right. You know, you could hand deliver it, you know, but, you know, Al Williamson worked all the way through his entire career the way he always worked. He never had to get a scanner. He never had to do all that. That was the end of that generation's ability to do that. And now you don't really have any choice. It's like if I did a job for Marvel, I got to scan it, certain thing, put it on their server the way that they want it. The same with King, you know. I send in 600 DPI TIFFs. I always have, because they don't want your originals.
Right. Know? Well, I do a cover for them occasionally. Like, let's see, I'd say every 2 months, I might get to do a variant cover for them. And it was fun because the last two that I did were the Fantastic Four. So I have to admit, even though I never got to draw the FF when I was a regular artist any place at Marvel, you know, I got to, and I've drawn them a few times in some cameos, but to actually draw a cover was really cool. And the last one was with the Impossible Man. They were doing some sort of a homage to Fantastic Four number 11. So I got to draw that. That was a lot of fun. But I just actually, I scan it at 600, send them a TIFF, you know, LZW compression. The file isn't that big. Okay. So I just send it to them in the email, and they go, hey, can you send us a high res? I said, that is the high res. You know, if you need it in another format, let me know. But that's a 600 DPI TIFF. Okay, great, thanks. And I've never had a problem with it.
How is
the people I'm dealing with are not that finicky that I have to put it in some sort of a server or whatever. But if they wanted it that way, of course I'd follow the rules. But I don't have to do that.
I'm sorry, Mike. I was going to mention back when we were talking about the leap from having a giant copier in your bedroom to now scanning things, and maybe talk about and actually trying to upload something to FTP or FileZilla or something like that, and that took forever also.
Yeah.
You know, once you started scanning, like to put a job up on the thing could take all night.
Right. And they would drop, right? Mm-hmm. And then you'd have to start all over again.
Mm-hmm. He'd wake up at 7 and half of the files didn't go through.
Right, yeah, because your computer went to sleep or some shit. God damn it.
Hey, before we run out of
picked up the phone. That was the way that you'd lose the internet connection too. Someone would need to use the landline.
Hey guys, before we run out of time, Alex, we've been stacking questions. We've been pocketing questions while you guys were talking. So
you can also show my our first collaboration.
Yeah, let's do the questions and then we'll show you your slide. All right, so now it's my favorite part of the show. Lightning round. Question for losing time. Alex, you know how this works. The chat has been nice enough to ask a bunch of questions. Stone Cold Steve Conley is going to ask these questions to you, Alex, and please give good, concise answers. Thank you very much.
Right.
All right, you have the floor, Steve.
All right. Starting off with Toy Visuals. Toy asked that question earlier. Thank you so much. Glad you're here. Alex, what's the hardest deadline you ever had to hit?
Yes. Okay. Oh, the hardest deadline ever hit in comics or in life in general? Well, the only reason I say that is because the hardest deadline I had to hit was when I was doing advertising storyboards for a company called Benton and Bowles in New York City. And they called me up one day at 3 o'clock and they said, hey, can you come in for a meeting? I said, sure. Went in for the meeting. I had to do 25 5x7 color frames overnight. I did the 25 5x7s overnight and got done at about 6 in the morning. Closed my eyes for 20 minutes and then hopped on the train and went into the city, dropped off to work. And they said, hey, listen, can you stick around in case there's changes? Hey, there's an office over there. You can go lay down and we'll wake you up like in about an hour or two. Okay, great. So I lay down, closed my eyes, it was an uncomfortable couch. And I'm just kind of dozing there. Finally, they go, okay, listen, so we have another meeting. Listen, we've got this push and we've got a whole bunch of stuff that has to get done. Do you think that you could hang out here today and do this stuff? I said, yeah, sure. So I figured, okay, I'm going to be working during the day and then by 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, I'm done. No, what happened was at that point when they woke me up, I had to go to the meeting and then come out and wait about 2 hours for them to get me a set of some script for about maybe 8 to 10 boards in color. So I did those and then I turned that into one art director. Then another art director had another script. And so basically make it short. There were times throughout the night that I stayed there overnight. And there were times where I had nothing on my table for like an hour or an hour and a half, 2 hours. And then I had to rush through stuff. When I got done, it was about 8:30, 8:40 in the morning. And by then, I'm doing 5x7s in color inside like a Target superstore with aisles and shelves. And it's like, they just said, whip that stuff out, whip it in there, no problem. I ended up doing something like, how many boards did I do? The first 25, and then I must have done like about another 60 frames overnight in color. All right. And when the senior art director came in that morning, and he said, Al, you got here early. I said, well, I never went home. He goes, what? He goes, let me go talk to so-and-so. And he's like fuming, the smoke's coming out of his ears. And at any rate, he came back and goes, look, I'm really, really sorry. He says, listen, I'm gonna get you a limousine. We'll get you home. Send me an invoice. We'll get you vouchered out. And it was a super high paying gig, but the money was unbelievable. I made more in that night, that day and a half, than I probably did in a half a year doing comics. Wow. But I was so numb from not sleeping that I couldn't appreciate it until I saw the check, and then I almost didn't believe it, But that was the hardest deadline, to have to work through that and get it done for these guys for 9 o'clock in the morning.
Amazing.
Comic-wise, the hardest one was a DC Presents job where for some reason I didn't time manage properly, and I had 3 pages left to draw for a Superman and the Atomic Knight story for DC Presents for Julie Schwartz, and it was a Thursday, and I was never one to call up and go, listen, I can't make it tomorrow. Can I bring these in Monday? I never did that. So I figured I got 3 pages to draw. I started at about, 9 or 9:30 in the morning after breakfast. And I got done at like 2 o'clock in the morning drawing 3 pages of full pencils. So that was a real tough one. Yeah.
Wow. And when you were doing those 5x7 boards and you said color, what color medium were you using? Markers?
Yes, markers, Chart Pack AD markers, which I still have a bunch of here today, and I do commissions and color stuff with them. But
that's fantastic. Toy Visuals, thank you for that question. We've got Robert Alvarez. Hello, Robert. speaking of storyboards, did Alex ever do storyboards for TV animation?
I did storyboards once for a Sesame Street thing at Universal with Bert and Ernie, and unfortunately, they didn't really. I wasn't really. Nobody talked to me about the format of regular animation. I should have just realized, hey, the camera's right here and it's pretty flat. And I did Bert and Ernie in like my style of Joe Kubert film type storytelling. And Bert was in the foreground, Ernie was in the background, and it was really dynamic looking. And the guy looked at it and he goes, "We can't use this." "Oh no, how come?" He goes, No, that's not how we produce comics. I mean cartoons and stuff. He says, "You got to do it flat." And I said, "Oh, okay." So I went back and I had to redraw everything flat, and it was really fast. It was 1, 2, 3, to be able to do that. But I had so much fun, doing Sergio Leone type boards for Bert and Ernie.
I want to see that. I want to see Joe.
I wish I still had those. I wish I still had those.
It's fantastic. Thanks, Robert. Where? Oh,
With the
I want to see that.
podcast.
Well, Kaz, I wish I had those laying around someplace, but there are some old portfolios that I haven't looked into for a while. I might have to crack them open and see if I can find any old time goodies in there. That would be a lot of fun.
With a Bob Kanigher script.
that's amazing. We got another question here from Bear Edwards. Question for Alex. I know you did some of your early work in House of Mystery. Did you ever work or cross paths with any of the Warren publisher or creators?
Well, the Warren creators. Well, obviously there were some people from DC and Marvel that worked for Warren. I never met. Steve Ditko, met him once. I never actually met Gene Colan, although both of those guys did some really nice wash work. No, I have to say, other than knowing that those were comic book guys that worked for them, and let's say guys like Joe Orlando and Al Williamson. I never got to meet Al Williamson. Unfortunately, I would have loved to. My buddy Bo Hampton, that I went to School of Visual Arts with, he was actually an assistant to Al for about 1.5 years, and so he's got some really great stories about when they were working together, and kind of I guess I envy him that position because I never worked as an assistant to anybody, and I think. I really missed out in my early days when I got into comics on my own, basically, and which was great to say I got in on my own merits. But I think if I could have even gone to the Joe Kubert school, if they would have came around the year before I got into comics, I probably would have not gotten into comics right away. I probably would have wanted to go to the Kubert school and learn from those old pros, which would have been great.
Thank you for that question, Bear. Oliver Villar.
Oliver. Oh, yeah, I see Oliver all the time.
Oh, that's great. Hi, Alex. Good to see you again. In Web issue 69 and 70, you and Jerry introduced Spider Hulk. How did that two-parter come about?
It's an interesting question, but at the same time, I walked into Jim Salicrup's office and he handed me the plot for 69 and said, "Hey, listen, this is the Hulk. So Hulk's going to guest star in this issue, but I had no inkling that he was going to turn into the Spider Hulk in the following issue. And when I turned in that Hulk job and they gave me the plot for the next one, there it was. And Jim just said, "Hey, he's going to turn into the Hulk. Have fun with it." I said, "Okay." So what you see was what you got. I mean, that's kind of like how it happened. But I have to say that it was I believe it was Jim who gave me the idea of having the crumbling logo on Web of Spider-Man 70, so I had to incorporate that into my drawing. And God, I signed so many of those at conventions. It's kind of a hellacious cover to sign because even though, thank God for silver pens and gold pens and things like that, because you can't put a black pen on any of that stuff and have a signature be legible enough for a fan to be able to appreciate it. So thank you, Silver Pens.
And thank you, Oliver. Thanks for that question. And last one in Lightning Palooza, we got James asking, I know you started with some zine work, but how do you feel about self-publishing?
I think self-publishing is a great idea. Obviously, for me, at this point in my life, if I was to do self-publishing, I would, want to do something outside of, let's say, the realm of superheroes. I was talking to somebody about this recently. I'd like to do a noir thing. Jim Steranko did one of the best noir pieces of all time when he created Chandler, however many years ago. And I've always loved that kind of stuff. And, hats, overcoats, guns, dames, smoky, misty bars. You feel like when you're drawing it, you'd want to have a narrator over the, behind you going, on that misty night as, so-and-so was walking down the street. Bam, all of a sudden, he hears a girl screaming in the alley. He runs in. There she is. The guy's run away. She says, "Oh, you saved me." And then he picks her up and, no, not that corny, but I mean, you know what I'm talking about. You got to have a beautiful girl, She ends up actually orchestrating the whole thing just because she wants to, I don't know, ruin this detective that saved her because he was responsible for the brother that ended up in jail. We've all heard that plot before. I don't know. It's coming off the top of my head. I'm not making up anything new. But if you see that, don't say that I didn't tell you so.
Fantastic.
Well, talk about self-publishing, though. If I go backtrack 48 years, it was self-publishing that got me into DC Comics. If you missed the first episode that we did together here, I self-published a fanzine, which is what we called them back in the day. Had my current artwork and stuff in it, and it was presented to the president of DC Comics back in 1977 at a convention via Phil Suling, who was the East Coast comic book major distributor at the time and father of the current big conventions. And it was through Phil and Saul Harrison, the president, who got me into DC Comics. So just because that's how I was able to present my material. So self-publishing, go for it.
That's great.
That was Lightning Palooza. We did that. Good job, guys.
I love how proactive you are throughout the various jobs you've talked about. You've said like I want this gig. I'm just going to draw this stuff and send this in, or I'm just going to do. There's a lot of taking the first step in almost all these stories. And also a lot of sounds good, but yeah, I could do that. For a lot of confidence, and it's
well,
great.
You know what? There was one time where there was a opening for a storyboard artist to be on staff. I think it was at Young and Rubicon, and Hy Rosen, an old-time comic book artist, was the art director at that time, and Jerry Grandinetti was a senior art director at that place. Okay, and so I came in with my samples, and they're looking at it, and I'm looking, and I'm in Hy Rosen's office, and there's a bunch of samples of some of the guys that are doing storyboards for them. Now, the guys that did nothing but marker, comp, storyboards, and comps, etc. These guys were so fast, and they knew color, and they could just whip that stuff down like 1, 2, 3. If there's anything that I have difficulty with, and I still do, it's I'm good with my with the color wheel, so to speak. But sometimes when I see people do coloring jobs, and I look at the choices they make and I go, gee, I wonder why they made that choice to do that. And I don't have that instinctive sense of choice to be able to put colors down sometimes. And at the same time, when I see it online, I wonder what it's going to look like in print, because even as good as digital printing is, there's always going to be a couple of degrees of separation between what you do on the internet and what you're going to get in print on the paper as good as the paper is. And sometimes those colors in print don't necessarily look that great being next to each other, because obviously the artist wasn't aware completely of what he was going to get back. But, I appreciate good color artists. I think, guys that do that. And but I've spoken to some guys like Dan Panosian, who, when he and I started working, we did a job together back in 1992. Three. I'm sorry, three. When I moved down to Florida, and he was only about, I don't know, 20 years old, and he was living in Florida. And Joe Rubenstein could not finish inking this one issue of Web of Spider-Man. It was number 96 with Venom and Ghost Rider. It was a fun 2-part story. And so Danny Fingeroth, the editor, he said, "Hey, listen, send the rest of the pages to Dan Panosian. He lives in Melbourne, Florida. Or no, not Melbourne, India Atlantic, which is, was south of me maybe by a couple of hours." And I got on the phone with him and I, just said, "Hey, listen, I'm sending this stuff to you, et cetera, et cetera." And so he inked, and he was inking. And those were the days, Mike, I'm sure you went through it, when everybody they all wanted us to draw in sort of that like image style, with that, that heavy line, and then you put the horizontal lines under it for the underlighting and all that kind of stuff.
I used to call that the sawtooth or the sharp tooth inking, or the lemon seeds on everybody's face. It looked like they had seeds.
Oh yeah,
lemon seed face.
Lemon seeds. I love that. That's great. That's right. Right. Yeah. And it seemed like there were these lines on people's faces and lines all over the place for the most part, for absolutely no reason whatsoever, but the fans loved it because they called it detail. Look at how much detail he's putting into that stuff. Look at the detail. And I remember talking to John Romita Sr. and saying, "Hey, this, he goes, I don't know. I'm not talking about it." But the thing is that whatever people have done, and you commend them for being able to find a system that works, that convinces the editors and convinces the fans that this is the new thing, and this is what you got to get, and this is what you got to do. And the sales just went up astronomically. So then, who's the wiser? Sure, we can like stuff and we don't have to like stuff, and that's fine. Everybody's got the right to agree and disagree. But to each his own when it comes to art. And that's the same thing like you say, with all of us, when you go to an editor and you send them some work, and meanwhile you're someplace else where they go, they ask me, how come you're not doing a regular book for Marvel or DC? It's like, they're not calling me up. Well, why don't you get in touch with them? I said, well, because I sort of been there, done that. Seriously. I mean, after a certain point you go, I'm not sitting here and, doing one of these and saying, how am I going to reinvent myself? And should I change my name to Alfonso Sandoval? And then, all of a sudden I'll come in as some new guy from Argentina and make up a persona. And then I've got some kind of a newfangled style. And they go, hey, kid, you got something. Hey, how long have you been drawing? About, 50 years. What? Where have you been? I've been hanging out in Daytona Beach. I used to hang out in Long Island. I am not who I say I am. And then I, reveal myself and they go, geez.
I actually did that. I actually did sort of like experiment on Darkhawk with that.
Okay.
And what I found out was, because there was a lot of pressure at that time, because certain books are selling, so then certain styles are selling, certain opportunities might come your way or be taken away from you. So I experimented, but what I found out is that people didn't like it. It's like they liked certain people, certain styles on certain books. Now I can draw like anybody. I can imitate anybody's style, right?
Sure.
But what I found out is that the people who were buying my stuff didn't like me doing that, and it didn't pull massive waves of other people over to it. So I did it for four or five issues, because that's the other thing people don't realize. You do something, it's solicited, it's sold. Well, you've got to draw 3 more issues by the time the numbers from that first issue actually come back. So you might have to do 4 or 5 issues of a different take. And then you find out that like people are like, eh. Now maybe if I was drawing Wolverine in that style, or I'm drawing, I don't know. There was, again, certain characters, certain artists on certain books in that time, it would happen. That's why they used to do stuff like let's get McFarlane to draw these covers, or get Jim to draw these covers, or whatever, because they would think that that would be something that would boost the sales up. But it never really worked, right? Because certain characters, let's say like Quasar, it just has that trajectory. It just, Black Panther, a lot of characters just do that. They'll start out and they will never gain any more than what they had in the first issue, right?
Right.
And so by the time you try something, at that point in the business, and it was before the internet or whatever, you would have to 4, 5, 6 issues before you saw, okay, it bumped up. Now, is it just that issue, or is it going to bump up the next issue and bump up the next issue and bump up, or is it going to go just like a blip, right? So it never really paid off, I think. And that blip of the Image years and all that, or the guys before, pre-Image, that stuff was such a, from like 91 until 94. And by 94, everything was already in free fall. Right? It was literally like 4 or 5 years where everybody was speculating and Wizard was promoting all that stuff, and the sales went up and then they went down just as fast.
Yeah. I mean, to think that they had Herb Trimpe had to even readjust to go ahead to keep working. Gosh, to try and imitate that kind of an Image style.
It was such an interesting mix of his style and that Image style. It didn't quite gel.
Oh no, it didn't. And I'm sure that he hated having to do that, but I mean, he still had to work. He had kids to support and the whole bit. And so, if that's your way of making money, I mean, you do what you do for the people that pay your check. So speaking of paying checks, Mike, you had mentioned to me earlier that you had your first job at DC Comics was inking some stuff that I had done, and they gave you a check for it. Hey, right. See, that was the segue how I got the word check in there again. So
this is, so I had done Robotech Defenders was my first job, and for DC, and then I was going around and trying to find other work. Hold on a second now. Why is my mouse not wanting to work? Hold on a second. Let me turn this on. See if this works.
What is this we're looking at?
So this is a superpowers book.
Right.
It's a kid's book. This.
I think it was probably published about maybe 8 inches by 8 inches, something like that.
Huh.
Yeah, it was so
like a golden book or something.
Yeah,
in that kind of a size relationship, yes. But it was soft cover. There was no hard cover there.
So I did the Robotech Defenders, and then I was talking to Joe Orlando, and he said, "Oh, hey, we've got this, activity book, coloring book, or whatever." So that was my second job, was inking, and I don't even know if I knew who the penciler was. And the one thing about these jobs is that they're horribly colored because they were coloring on stats with Dr. Martin's dyes or something. So they're just awful.
Right.
They're all wishy and weird and because here's the other thing, because Dr. Martin's dyes are slightly phosphorescent, when they would take something like this and they would go get separations, the colors would get really weird because when they would scan it, it's not because they were not good colors. The colors would change.
Mm.
So there's a lot of weird, bad coloring on this, which is weird because a nice clear airbrush suddenly,
Right.
And so these are Alex's pencils and your inks, Mike?
And
Yeah.
Alex's pencils and my inks.
Yeah, back in the middle 80s, I was doing a number of these box covers for the action figures. And in some cases, there were little comic books that were involved also with the action figure inside that bubble. And I did a couple of those. One was inked by Gary Martin, and that looked really nice. Yeah, there's the cover, right? That's the I took pictures of all this stuff when this guy came to me, this fan came to me at New York Comic Con and showed me this book for the first time because I had never seen it. So I didn't know who inked it. And all I knew was I did the gig and I got paid for it. I think for each illustration, I got paid a page of comic book rate. So that was, wow, how good is that? I'd have to draw one picture and get paid for a page. So I did those box covers, the same thing. The comic books were usually 2 panels, and you got paid, and they were smallish, and you got paid for a whole page. And so, we did this thing. And I asked the fan, I said, "Hey, can I trade you some artwork for it, or give you a new?" "Oh, no, I'm keeping this, but thanks for signing it." It's like, hey, that's fine. I wasn't going to like search him out afterwards and break his legs or anything, but
You see him in the parking lot.
Get him.
Get him. Yeah, get him. Now this is always what I wondered about when Superman is pushing on a planet to move the planet. Now, if with the laws of physics and science and all that stuff, if he needed that much strength to move the planet out of orbit, wouldn't his hands go through the planet and he'd come out on the other side? Hey,
Well, I would think that the only way that Superman could move a planet is he would have to have a mass greater than the planet, right? To fight gravity and the inertia and all that. It's complete comic book nonsense, but
right.
But yeah, I remember having fun doing it, and like you said, it paid a good was DC Special Projects. I think that's what they call it. So there you go. We're done.
I'm still doing these Superpowers covers. I don't know if I mentioned that the last time, but did I mention that the last time?
I don't think you did.
I did them 40 years ago. They got a couple of young editors up at DC, and they got to be in charge of doing a new wave of these Superpowers figures. I guess with the expectancy or hope that somebody like Todd McFarlane would pick up on what DC was doing and maybe produce actual figures. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I just did the box covers for eight different characters, the first set. And then they sent me a file when it was all mocked up, and I'm looking at it and I'm going, wow, why do you need Todd? You got the figure in there already. But I didn't realize they just created it digitally. So when they sent me a couple of comp copies, it was a flat copy, and it looks like there's a bubble on it, but it's not. It's just a cover on an existing comic. And so we did 8, and then I did another 9, and I just got an email yesterday that they were approved to do a third set now. And would I be willing and able to want to do this? Now, yeah, of course. It's special project stuff, and more stuff for people to come and have me sign at conventions. And gosh, on this kind of strange, rare type stuff, the original artwork sells very well too.
That's
fantastic. All right, Alex, we're going to start wrapping it up. So,
okay.
Thanks again. I don't know where the time goes. I feel like we just logged on. And
I was going to ask you, how has your work day changed from when you were working on comics or working on those on the strips now?
It's a lot lighter, Mike. I'll tell you that. I don't go to sleep at night after having to feel. I don't have a deadline doom whatsoever. Okay, I've got commissions to do on my drawing board before I go to the next show. Not a lot. I know some guys that, they do like 12, 15 commissions before a show. And if I have a, anywhere from 2 to 5, I'm happy. Hey, these are done already. I just have to drop them off. I think, like I say, an occasional cover for Marvel. Once in a blue moon, let's see, I might get a call from Mad Cave Productions that I have to turn down because they asked me to do an 8-page story for Flash Gordon or something like that, and they email me on a Monday, and they need pencils by like the following. They need pencils and inks by the Friday of the next week, and I tell them I can't do it. I got a convention. I'm leaving on Thursday, coming home Monday. Oh, sorry. Okay, we'll get to you another time. And I'm thinking, am I the last guy that you called because the first couple of guys couldn't make it, and so that's why? Or is this the way it is in comics these days, where they're still firing stuff at you late, and they just expect you to drop everything and kill yourself to get a job done? And I'm beyond killing myself. Hey, like I said, I turned 73. I've put in my time. I still enjoy the things that I work on, but for the most part, I get up, mosey on to that. I wake up and I just smell that coffee my wife is making in the kitchen, and have my cup of coffee. And then I think about what I have to do today. Sometimes I feel like I don't have anything to do. Sometimes I just,
Do you work for yourself? Do you do stuff, draw for yourself?
Not very often, to be honest with you. Although one thing I want to get into for myself would be, I'm really intrigued by watercolors. I think watercolors, I just love the fact that you can put watercolors down and you don't know what you're getting in certain areas. Like backgrounds, you lay that, make it wet, put the color down, and you just see it diffuse. And it turns into all kinds of neat stuff. As they used to say in art school, the teachers, you can get some happy accidents. And I kind of like what happens with that. The fact that, some guys, yes, can do exact paintings in watercolors. There's this, on Instagram, there's this one artist, he's an Asian guy, and he uses this big wide brush, and he's always doing portraits. I forget what his name is. You've probably seen it, Mike. Yeah. And, he has that light pencil drawing, and he starts going in there, and of course they speeded it all up and everything. But boy, when he gets done, it's just this unimaginable portrait that just looks so photographic. I mean, the guy knows what he's doing, obviously. For me, I'd be putzing around and, seeing what happens. And, the thing is that even with happy accidents, as you look at it and you go, okay, you know what, let me flatten this baby out. And then I'm going to bring it to a convention and say, hey, listen, here's a watercolor painting. As soon as fans hear the word painting, they freak out. You can raise the price, But, I really don't. I almost feel like sometimes when I read about some of these guys and they say they haven't done anything for a couple of years because they felt like they had burnout. And I almost feel mentally that, my creative, I want to do something, but yet my creative juices haven't plagued me yet to that particular point where I say, you know what, I have to do something. Although I do admit that being semi-retired, if that's what I want to call myself, there are times where if I'm not doing something in my studio, getting to a commission, laying something out or whatever, or even just sitting at that desk in this environment to look for inspiration, look through art books, whatever, to get me inspired. If I'm sitting out in the other part of my house, I get completely bored. I can read books. I enjoy reading books now. Got back to reading books that I wasn't doing for all those years while I was drawing comics. Didn't have the time or the energy. I'd start reading a book and keep reading the same paragraph over and over again. So now I do enjoy reading books. There are certain things that I enjoy watching on TV, but I can only watch TV for so long. After I do something and I feel, I'm not going to say great about it. I haven't felt really great about what I've been doing in a long time, but it's after I get done, it's pleasing enough where I say, yeah, I guess I still got it. But I'm waiting for that. I'm waiting to get into a particular point where I feel like, yeah, this is something now that I'm itching to do that I have to do. I just haven't gotten there yet.
So you don't
I think
keep
one of the things that's plaguing me is the fact that I've had some physical health issues. I enjoy being outdoors. I enjoy going out and playing golf with my buddies. Okay, even if it's just once a week, maybe twice a week. But because of my physical issues between my knees, my hips, now I got a bad shoulder. I'll probably need surgery on it by the end of the year when convention season is over. And so I haven't done anything outside. And that's a little bit depressing to me. I don't like being inside all the time. I feel like all those years that I dedicated myself to sitting at that drawing table, to support my family and do what I had to do. Now I feel like this is my time, So, and I applaud guys like Mike, who, I see he does black and white. He does some beautiful paintings. Sometimes I look at these paintings and go, where does he find the time to do that? Oh my God. That's so, I'm envious of your skill and talent at what you do, Mike. I just want to let you know that.
Thank you.
So when you have that kind of talent and ability where you can paint and find, get away from doing the strips and the black and white and all those deadlines, and you can do something like that to relax and feel really good about yourself. That's what I'm searching for, I think, with the watercolors, and we'll see what happens. If it does,
that's the great thing about watercolors, because, and in fact, the last couple of years I've done less oil, because when you would go out and do the oil, it's one thing to go out and then you got to take your easel, even if you have a pochade box. It's a lot more cleanup and preparation. I got a little backpack with a little watercolor book, and I can go out. I got my little folding chair. I find something I can sit down, do my sketch. The watercolor with the gouache, it's, I take two bottles, water bottles with me, one for dirty water, one for clean water. It's so simple. So I would say just make yourself up a little travel pack and then go out and, and sit down someplace, probably early or later in the day because it gets hot down there. But just play around with it and have fun. I think it's really important for me that I do that I stretch myself in these other areas that I'm interested in, because I know a lot of guys that always sort of had that interest, even like John Buscema. And I think what happened is they tethered themselves and became such workhorses that when they retired, they didn't have they had the desire, but they didn't have the chutzpah that they had when they were younger. They spent all that energy. And I think it like having a sketchbook and some of the stuff, I think, is you just do it for you. And if it's, I don't know how many bad paintings I've done, I've done a lot, but sometimes it's the process of going out and sitting and enjoying nature and enjoying the challenge. And, if the painting sucks, you still have a good time. It's different if you sit down and you draw a comic book page or a strip. It has to work. It has to go to the next step. There's no like, well, I just drew this Week of the Phantom and it's a piece of shit, but oh well. And
no, you can't, because those Phantom fans are going to hang you.
Right. I mean, that's the real difference, I think. I was always interested when I was younger, but I think when I started teaching, it really showed me. I really got through that. I got into just doing stuff for myself, and it's really vital to me to be able to do that, because like I said, I think I'm always surprised when I meet somebody like you, or I talk to somebody like Howard Chaykin or somebody, and they don't have a sketchbook. They don't do anything for themselves. It's not that they don't even necessarily have the desire, but I would go nuts now if I didn't do stuff for myself.
Well, it's like sometimes, I'm not using this as an excuse, but I've got a 3.5-year-old granddaughter.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I mean, I had stuff that I had to get done today, and then I had ideas of doing some things in the afternoon. And then my wife says, "Oh, listen, Erica's coming over with Allie. Allie's my granddaughter. Erica's my daughter at 3:00. Oh, okay. So then it's like, okay, my granddaughter comes over and, you're playing with her and bouncing her around till, 5:30, and then they leave. And then, what time do you want to eat dinner? Is 6:37 okay? Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, then I realize, okay, well, if I get started on something, that dinner hour is going to come really fast.
Mhm.
And while I'm just sitting there noodling and doodling and trying to come up with something, I'm going to have to put it down. And then, if I had any aspirations of continuing after dinner, I was committed to this. No, I'm only kidding.
you
I'm only
can't
kidding.
blame
You know
us.
what? This is a wonderful day. The wonderful way to break up my day, I have to say. Talking to you guys, and I'm a social guy. I don't like the fact that I've had to live in my studio, even though working at home my entire life. It's kind of like it's a solitary existence. I mean, I was fortunate that I've had a family, that I've had a wife that's kind of hung with me for all the time, 48 years. I know, hey, look, guys like Gene Colan, guys like Gil Kane, they were married 2-3 times because the wives couldn't handle it. And so I remember talking to John Romita, and he says, yeah, Gene Colan has to pencil 3 pages a day just because of all his alimony payments.
Yeah, that was true of a couple guys that I heard about. Yeah, because a couple of cartoonists ended up having to continue to work because they had 2 or 3 ex-wives.
Oh yeah. So and then John said to me, he goes, you ever look, if you look at a Gene Colan story, the first 2/3 or 3/4 of it, there's always big panels. It could be a page with 2 panels or 3 panels. And, Captain America could just be standing there with a shield, in an environment with some cool lighting and whatever. And it is moving the story along, but then the action takes place. And in the last 5 pages, Gene has to get all this story in, and you'll start counting like 8 and 9 panel pages because he's got to get it all into those 20 or 22 pages, I think a case in point was, there was I can't remember what story was it that Gene Colan had penciled. I think it was a Captain America and Wally Wood inked that one issue.
Yeah.
And if I looked at that after he spoke to me about that, I looked at that particular issue, and if you look at and you could see the last 25% of that story is so much action, but the panels just got so many. That the pages have so many panels because he, didn't really plot out the story for himself as he was working on it. But at the same time, it also depends on who your writer is. I mean, a guy like Stan, where he'd give you a germ of an idea and you have to be the storyteller. So you're kind of making it up as you go along. And then you're stuck realizing, oh, I still got to get to do all this stuff. Whereas when I worked with plotting writers, guys like Jerry Conway, he gave me a page-by-page breakdown of each story, of each page. Howard Mackey, sometimes it would be pages, 2 through 4, or 6 through 8, 9 through 12. Little blocks like that, where then I'd have to plan out, hey, how many panels am I going to need to get this done? But to be able to take one paragraph and turn that into a 20-page story or a 22-page story, that takes a lot of planning. And I'm not saying that I couldn't do it, but that plotting aspect would, it's not like I was Jack Kirby or Buscema where they would look at it and it would just come off the top of their heads. It would be too much work for me to do that. And that's why I think Wally Wood got pissed off because, Stan basically, he said Stan wanted him to basically write the story and Stan just put words in, but he wasn't getting paid extra for it.
Yeah. When you worked with Stan, did you get on the strips? It was a full script, right?
Well, it was a full strip. It was a full script, which kind of surprised me initially. But I mean, it was better to do that for a newspaper strip. But then I found out, well, I can't even say in 1997 when I first started working on the Sundays, was Stan actually writing it or was he editing it over somebody else already? I do know that by 1998, middle of it, 98, Jim Salicrup was writing the strip, and with copious editing from Stan to make it, work in Stan's rhythms. And then in 2000, Roy Thomas came on. So Stan was always like mostly my editor, so to speak. But I did work with Stan on the Defenders of the Earth #1. He, I think, well, let's see. No, I think Bob Harris plotted that and Stan did the dialogue. And I remember the first review from Stan at that point was, hey, how come, there should be some more dynamics in, these pages. And I wanted to, and I said to the editor, I said, well, the way the thing is plotted, I said, I've got, 9 panel pages with room for dialogue. In some cases, I'm moving the story along. I mean, every panel can't be dynamic, but, that was just that first issue. And I don't even know if Stan ever remembers working on that with me, but I'll never know.
All right, you guys, pencils down. We have reached the end of our runway. Alex, thank you so much. You've been a fantastic guest. Dare I say a part 3, maybe down the road? But
yeah, listen, if it becomes a chat fest, and we can, I don't think I ever even touched upon working on, doing film storyboards. I boarded about maybe at least almost a half a dozen indie films, and each one was a different experience. So, that's, hey, if you want to. Yes, to part 3. Well, thank you, Kaz. I appreciate that. Yeah, if you guys have nothing else to do on a Wednesday night and you want to have a storyboard chat, hey, we'll touch upon, why we like Superman and why we didn't like the Fantastic Four, vice versa, or yes or no to both. And
And I did had a really long chat with Mark Simon. We should have him on too. That would be a nice.
Oh, that would be great if we could get both of us on there and we could, reminisce about some of the things that we did together in the past. Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. Yeah, I'll get in touch. Well, you can get in touch with him, or I can just mention that I was on, on the show, and we could possibly set up doing a chat. He's always up for that.
Yeah, I'd love to do a storyboard roundtable. That would be really cool. Be really cool. All right, Alex, thank you so much.
All right, guys. Well, listen, have a good evening. And as they say in the business, we'll talk again.
I love it. Thanks, Alex.
So long, guys.
All right.
I booted him out, but in a loving way. I lovingly kicked him out of the studio.
He's cut him loose.
Thank you so much, Alex. What a fantastic guest. Guys, we have reached the end of our studio programming for tonight. Like the test patterns are going to play.
The Indian with the cigar, whatever test pattern's coming on. And that other one that used to always play, which was the guy in the saber jet flying up in the clouds. Right.
Yeah, it's so funny.
Just stand out and touch the face of God or whatever. They used to do that all.
I remember telling some of my work study students at the college, I was like, go watch Poltergeist. And they came back and they were like, we didn't get it. What was wrong with the TV? Like,
yeah, no more static, man.
Why was their TV broken? Was that the horror? Was that the suspense?
Those people never turned the TV with a pair of pliers. Turned the channel with a pair of pliers.
I got Steve with that. That's fantastic.
The horror was the TV was broken.
The TV was broken. What's with the static? All right, guys. Thank you so much. We are still. This is kind of the end of the summer. We have some really fantastic shows lined up for you. September is going to be stacked.
Solid.
We're almost full up with guests on September. We still have some August left. We'll let you know what's happening on the program as soon as we do. So I'd like to give another stupid shout out to Alex Saviuk, who's a fantastic guest. We'll have it back for part 3. Thank you to my brothers in arms, Mike and Stone Cold Steve Conley. And thank you, dear pencil pushers.
Viewers like you.
Viewers like you will be escaping. But we got to get back to the boards. You know how we do it, being expert cartoonists and all. So thank you so much, guys. I think we're at the end game. Cumberbatch told us we didn't listen, but it's
which version of Earth are we on now?
I still think we're the Biff Tannen got the almanac timeline. That's what I think. But we'll let you know what happens here next. Thank you guys so much. And I would be remiss if we did not sign off without watching those Kirby hands. Let's get those Kirby hands.
Yep.
Please.
Definitely Kirby hand time.
I love it. Like and subscribe, guys. See you on the other side. Have a great night.